Captain Emily Winters kept her face carefully neutral as another burst of barely concealed laughter echoed through Europa Station's observation deck. The Drachnid ambassador, a towering figure with iridescent scales and multiple sets of eyes, didn't even attempt to hide his amusement as he gestured toward the EN's Prometheus through the reinforced viewports. "Fascinating design," he drawled, mandibles clicking in what Winters had learned was their species' equivalent of a smirk. Though perhaps a bit limited in scope, one would expect humanity's first venture into true space travel to be more ambitious. The Prometheus hung against the backdrop of Jupiter's swirling storms, its obsidian hull absorbing, rather than reflecting the gas giant's light. To human eyes, the ship was a masterpiece of engineering, sleek, purposeful, and unlike anything Earth had produced before. To the Galactic Concordat's representatives, it was apparently little more than a child's toy. "We believe in quality over quantity, Ambassador," Winters replied, allowing just a hint of pride to color her voice. "The Prometheus represents the combined efforts of Earth's finest minds." "Indeed," a melodious voice chimed in. The Altarian representative, a being of seemingly living crystal, approached with an air of diplomatic patronage. "And we commend humanity's first steps into the galactic community. Though perhaps, given the current political climate, a more robust defense force might have been prudent." Winters knew what they were really saying. News of the Hexan Empire's expansion had reached Earth months ago. Their fleets numbered in the thousands, their technology centuries ahead of what humanity openly displayed. To them, the Prometheus must look like bringing a knife to a thermonuclear war. If they only knew. "Lieutenant Carter," she called to her XO, who had been quietly seething nearby, "would you escort our guests to the demonstration?" The viewing gallery they moved to offered a perfect view of the testing range, a field of decommissioned satellites and space debris that would serve their purposes perfectly. Winters noted with satisfaction how the alien delegates arranged themselves with the casual superiority of adults preparing to humor a child's performance. "The Prometheus," she began, letting her voice carry across the now silent chamber, "utilizes what we call a quantum cascade drive for propulsion. A rather simple system, by your standards, I'm sure. More subtle clicking and crystalline chiming, more alien laughter. Right on cue." "Beginning demonstration sequence," Carter announced, his voice professionally crisp. The Prometheus's hull seemed to ripple, patterns of darkness flowing across its surface like oil on water. The quantum cascade drive didn't ignite with the familiar flare of conventional engines. Instead, space itself seemed to shiver around the ship. The debris field ahead began to move, not from any physical force, but from the subtle manipulation of spacetime itself. Winters watched the aliens' reactions carefully. Amusement turned to confusion, then to something approaching concern as pieces of metal began to fold in impossible ways, transformed by forces their sensors couldn't quite explain. "A most unusual propulsion method," the Drachnid ambassador remarked, his earlier mockery fading slightly. "Though hardly practical for real combat applications, surely." Winters allowed herself a small smile. "The quantum cascade system isn't for propulsion, Ambassador. That's just a beneficial side effect. Would you like to see what it's really for?" She nodded to Carter, who sent the predetermined signal. In an instant, a section of the debris field simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no dispersal of matter, just a perfect sphere of empty space where tons of metal had been moments before. The laws of physics had temporarily stopped applying to that region of space, with predictably fatal results for anything caught within. The silence that followed was deafening. As I said, Winters continued into the shocked quiet. "We believe in quality over quantity. The Prometheus isn't just a ship, it's humanity's statement to the galaxy. We look forward to sharing more demonstrations in the coming weeks." She turned away from the viewport, leaving the aliens to stare at the impossible void their sensors still couldn't explain. Let them laugh. Soon enough, they'd understand exactly what humanity had achieved while they were busy building bigger guns and faster ships. The real demonstration was still to come. The United Nations General Assembly had never been so quiet. The holoprojection of High Admiral Cathax of the Hexan Empire loomed over the gathered representatives, its chitinous armor gleaming under the lights of what was clearly a warship's command bridge. Behind the alien commander, tactical displays showed the endless waves of their armada. 10,000 ships strong, each bearing enough firepower to level a continent. Your species' defiance is entertaining. Cathax's translated voice resonated through the chamber. But surely you understand the futility of your position. One ship, no matter how unusual its capabilities, cannot stand against the might of the Hexan Empire. Captain Winters, standing at parade rest beside the Secretary General's podium, watched the faces of Earth's leaders. There was fear there, certainly. They'd have to be fools not to fear such overwhelming force. But there was something else too, something the Hexans had failed to account for. Pure human stubbornness. The terms of our ultimatum are generous, Cathax continued, mandibles spreading in what intelligence suggested was a gesture of smug superiority. Submit to Hexan authority. Surrender the Prometheus and its technological secrets, and your species will be granted protectorate status. Resist. And the image shifted to footage of a previous conquest, showing Hexan warships reducing cities to ash. A mistake. The massive mistake. The Secretary General rose slowly, her dark eyes fixed on the alien transmission. High Admiral, we appreciate your theatrical presentation. However, I believe there's been a miscalculation in your approach. Oh, the alien commander's head tilted. Do enlighten us. You're broadcasting this message on all Earth frequencies. Every human on the planet is watching right now. And if there's one thing you should have learned about humans from your intelligence gathering, she smiled thinly, it's that we don't respond well to bullies. Screens around the chamber lit up with incoming signals from every nation on Earth. Military commanders, civilian leaders, even private citizens, all sending the same message. No surrender. Cathax's supernatural composure finally cracked. You would doom your entire species over pride. One ship against 10,000. The mathematics error. The mathematics, Captain Winters cut in, stepping forward, are exactly what you should be worried about, Admiral. You've shown us your fleet. Impressive. Conventional. Predictable. Would you like to see what the Prometheus did to your advanced scout fleet again? The alien commander's mandibles clicked rapidly. Anger, according to the xenologists. That anomaly was a trick, a deception. No single vessel could what? Rewrite the laws of physics in a localized area. Create temporary zones where reality itself breaks down. Winters allowed herself a predatory smile. You've spent centuries building bigger ships and better guns. We decided to try something different. The Secretary General stepped forward again. Humanity's response to your ultimatum is this. The Prometheus will depart Earth orbit in 24 hours. It will meet your Armada at the edge of the Kuiper Belt. You have until then to reconsider your position. The transmission cut off before Cathax could respond. In the sudden silence, Winters felt the weight of every eye in the chamber on her. Captain, the Secretary General's voice was quiet but firm. The Prometheus's full capabilities, are they really enough? Winters thought of the classified decks below the ship's public areas. The technologies that made the quantum cascade drive look primitive by comparison. The theories that had made the greatest physicists in human history question everything they thought they knew about reality. Ma'am, she replied, what they saw in the demonstration was our warning shot. The Hexans think they're going to war. She started walking toward the exit, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. They're wrong. They're going to get a physics lesson. As she left the General Assembly, alerts began flooding in. The Hexan Armada was moving, right on schedule. Humanity had made its choice. Now it was time to show the galaxy exactly why Earth had only needed one ship. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez walked along the restricted deck of the Prometheus, his footsteps echoing through corridors that officially didn't exist. Behind him, A group of wide-eyed cadets followed in reverent silence, their fresh uniforms marking them as recent graduates of Earth's most selective physics programs. Time to show them what they'd really signed up for. "What you're about to see," he announced, stopping at a massive bulkhead door marked Project Infinity, "is why we let the galaxy think we're primitive." His hand pressed against the biometric scanner. The quantum cascade drive they mocked. It's not a propulsion system. It's a delivery mechanism. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a chamber that seemed to defy conventional geometry. The cadets gasped as they entered. Along the walls, dozens of crystalline structures pulsed with inner light, each one containing what appeared to be a small piece of twisted space. "Holy shit," whispered Cadet Sarah Chen, the youngest of the group. "Those are quantum singularities. You've actually managed to stabilize them." Rodriguez smiled. "That's just the beginning. Lieutenant Evans, would you demonstrate the temporal displacement field?" A young officer stepped forward, activating a control panel. In the center of the room, a sphere of pure darkness materialized. Inside it, time itself became visible, streams of probability and causality flowing like liquid mercury. "The Hexans think they understand warfare," Rodriguez continued, walking around the sphere. "They think it's about bigger guns, stronger shields, faster ships. But while they were perfecting conventional weapons, we were asking different questions. Like, what if we could temporarily suspend cause and effect in a localized area?" He gestured to another section of the lab, where engineers worked on what looked like a series of interlocking rings. The quantum cascade system isn't about moving through space. It's about moving space itself, about creating zones where the fundamental forces of the universe can be rewritten. "But sir," another cadet spoke up, "the energy requirements must be astronomical." "How did we solve?" "Zero-point energy extraction." Rodriguez cut in. "Another little secret we've been keeping. Those crystals, they're not just containing quantum singularities. They're harvesting energy from the quantum foam of space itself. Infinite power, zero emissions." He led them deeper into the lab, past chambers where scientists worked on devices that seemed to belong in science fiction. Entropy manipulation fields, temporal accelerators, probability drives, each one capable of turning the laws of physics into weapons. "Why show us this now?" Chen asked, her eyes fixed on a device that seemed to be folding a piece of metal through dimensions that shouldn't exist. Rodriguez's expression grew serious. "Because in 12 hours, we're going to war with an empire that thinks they understand power. They've got 10,000 ships. We've got one. But our one ship can literally rewrite reality within its sphere of influence." He turned to face the group, seeing the mix of awe and apprehension on their young faces. The Prometheus isn't just humanity's first interstellar vessel. It's a platform for weaponized physics. Every theory too dangerous to test, every concept too radical to publish, it's all here. We're about to show the galaxy why quality beats quantity. An alert chimed through the lab. Rodriguez checked his tablet and smiled grimly. The Hexan fleet is accelerating. They'll reach the Kuiper Belt ahead of schedule. He gestured to the various stations around the lab. "Take your positions, study the systems, because in a few hours, we're going to give the most important physics lesson in human history." As the cadets dispersed to their assigned stations, Rodriguez walked to the main viewport. The stars seemed to shimmer, as if already anticipating the ways their light would bend when the Prometheus unleashed its full potential. The galaxy thought they knew what humanity was capable of. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Hexan Advance Fleet detected," Lieutenant Carter announced, his voice steady despite the tension on the Prometheus's bridge. 3 dreadnoughts, 15 cruisers, 40 destroyer-class vessels. They're arranging into attack formation Delta. Captain Winters sat in her command chair, watching the holographic display as red dots materialized at the edge of the Kuiper Belt. The enemy ships moved with practiced precision, spreading out to surround the lone human vessel. Their confidence was almost palpable. "They're hailing us," Communications Officer John reported. Put them through. Winters straightened in her chair as the imposing figure of a Hexan fleet commander appeared on the main screen. Human vessel. The alien's translated voice dripped with condescension. Your demonstration at Europa Station was impressive theatrics. But surely you don't intend to resist our entire advance fleet. Winters smiled. Actually, Commander, I was about to suggest you surrender. The bridge crew maintained their professional composure, but she caught the slight quirk of Carter's lips. The Hexan commander's mandibles clattered in what intelligence suggested was incredulous laughter. Perhaps your translation software is malfunctioning. You face 58 warships, each capable of reducing your vessel to atoms. Your bravado is... Dr. Rodriguez. Winters cut in. Initiate test sequence alpha. In the engineering lab, Rodriguez's fingers flew across his control panel. Quantum singularity stabilized. Targeting the lead dreadnought. Field projection in 3, 2, 1. The space around the massive Hexan vessel seemed to ripple, like heat waves over hot asphalt. For a moment, nothing happened. Then reality itself began to unravel. The dreadnought didn't explode. It didn't break apart. Instead, it began to fold in on itself, caught in a localized field where the laws of physics temporarily ceased to function. The ship's own mass became its executioner, crushing it into a point of infinite density before that, too, winked out of existence. Silence fell across all communication channels. Fascinating result. Rodriguez's voice came through the bridge speakers. The quantum cascade effect was even more efficient than our simulations predicted. Should I prepare another demonstration? The remaining Hexan ships broke formation, their perfectly arranged attack pattern dissolving into chaos. Emergency thrusters fired as they desperately tried to escape the range of whatever had just unmade their flagship. Impossible. The Hexan commander's composure shattered. Our sensors indicate. This defies all known physics. Known to you, perhaps, Winters replied calmly. Would you like to see what happens when we introduce temporal acceleration to the quantum field? The effects are quite spectacular. You're bluffing, the commander snarled, but fear had crept into his translated voice. No single ship cooled. Target locked on the remaining dreadnoughts, Carter reported with professional detachment. Temporal field generators charged. Winters leaned forward in her chair. Last chance, Commander. Retreat, and tell your empire what you witnessed here. Stay, and discover exactly how many ways the Prometheus can rewrite reality. The Hexan fleet's response came in actions rather than words. Ships began jumping to FTL, their retreat as hurried as their advance had been measured. In less than a minute, only the commander's vessel remained. This isn't over, the alien leader warned. The Empire will send its main fleet. We know. Winters stood, walking closer to the view screen. We're counting on it. Run back to your masters, Commander. Tell them what one human ship did to their advanced fleet. Tell them how we turned their finest dreadnought into a physics equation. And then ask yourself, what else might we be capable of? The final Hexan ship vanished into FTL, leaving the Prometheus alone in the silence of space. On the bridge, the crew allowed themselves a moment of celebration before returning to their duties. Send word to Earth, Winters ordered, returning to her chair. Tell them Phase 1 is complete. And Dr. Rodriguez. Yes, Captain. Prepare the rest of our surprises. Something tells me the main fleet won't be as easily impressed. The Galactic Concordat's emergency session erupted into chaos as the footage played on the central holodisplay. Representatives from 100 species watched in stunned silence as the Hexan dreadnought collapsed into nothingness, consumed by forces their most advanced sensors couldn't comprehend. This must be propaganda, the Drachnid ambassador declared, though his scales had lost their usual luster. The humans cannot possibly. It's real. The Altarian representative's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. Our long-range observers confirmed it. 1 Earth vessel, 3 quantum events, 3 Hexan capital ships simply ceased to exist. In the observation gallery, Earth's ambassador Thomas Chen watched the growing pandemonium with quiet satisfaction. The same aliens who had laughed at the Prometheus were now arguing about whether to officially condemn the Hexan Empire's aggression or beg Earth for protection against it. His comm unit chimed. "Ambassador," Captain Winter's voice came through. "You'll want to see this. Sending new telemetry." The data appeared on his personal display. As he read, his eyes widened. "Captain, are you certain?" The quantum cascade events created something unexpected. Dr. Rodriguez calls them reality fractures, zones where our alterations to the laws of physics have become permanent. In the main chamber, the argument reached fever pitch as new reports flooded in. The Hexan Empire's subject worlds were in revolt, emboldened by news of their military's humiliation. Smaller powers were withdrawing from treaties, sensing weakness in their once invincible overlord. The balance of power, the meditation collective's hive mind buzzed, has been irreversibly altered. Humanity did not simply destroy 3 ships. They demonstrated mastery over reality itself. Chen's comm chimed again. This time, Dr. Rodriguez's excited voice came through. "Ambassador, the reality fractures are spreading. Each zone is affecting nearby space, creating a cascade effect of altered physics. We're not just changing the rules of warfare, we're changing the fundamental structure of space itself." The Concordat chamber fell silent as new sensor data appeared on the main display. The regions where the Prometheus had unleashed its weapons were expanding, creating permanent zones where conventional technology simply didn't work. Faster than light drives failed, energy shields collapsed. Even basic propulsion systems became unreliable. "This is why," Chen addressed the chamber, his voice carrying clearly, "Earth never built a fleet. Why waste resources on thousands of ships when you can simply change how reality works?" The Drachnid ambassador's scales shifted to a pale gray. Fear coloration. "Your species, you weren't developing weapons. You were developing ways to rewrite the laws of physics themselves." "The Hexan main fleet approaches," the Altarian announced. 10,000 ships on direct course for the engagement zone. Chen smiled as his comm unit displayed tactical updates from the Prometheus. Captain Winters had positioned the ship at the edge of the largest reality fracture, where the altered physics would give them an even greater advantage. "We did try to warn them," he addressed the chamber. "Earth offered peace. The Hexans chose war. Now they'll learn why humans spent centuries trying to understand the universe instead of simply building bigger weapons." The chamber erupted again as the first reports from the Hexan fleet arrived. Ships were experiencing critical failures as they approached the combat zone. Their much-vaunted technology, designed to work under normal physics, was worse than useless in the altered space around the Prometheus. "Ambassador," Winter's voice came through again. "Dr. Rodriguez reports the reality fractures have achieved critical mass. They're self-sustaining now. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't undo what's been done." Chen watched the panic spread through the Concordat chamber as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just changed the rules of warfare. They'd changed the very nature of space itself. The galaxy would never be the same. "Understood, Captain," he replied, watching alien diplomats frantically consulting with their governments. "I believe the phrase is, 'Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.'" Winter's laugh came through clearly. "Star Wars, Ambassador. Really?" "Sometimes." Chen smiled as another Hexan ship disappeared from tactical displays. The classics are classics for a reason. The Hexan Armada emerged from FTL in waves, their ships blackening space like a swarm of mechanical locusts. On the Prometheus's bridge, tactical displays highlighted critical targets in crimson. 10,000 ships, arranged in attack formations that had conquered 100 worlds. "They've adapted their shields," Carter reported, studying the sensor data. "Multiphasic harmonics designed to resist quantum manipulation. Clever." Captain Winters allowed herself a small smile. "Dr. Rodriguez, your assessment?" "Their shield modifications would have worked perfectly." Rodriguez's voice carried a hint of amusement. against our first demonstration. Shame we've got so many other toys to try out. The HFY Admiral's transmission cut through all channels, his mandibles clicking in barely contained rage. Your tricks won't save you this time. Humans, we've analyzed your weapon's signature. Our fleet is prepared. Actually, Winters replied, standing from her command chair, you analyzed one weapon. Would you like to see what else we've been working on? Lieutenant Carter, initiate timeline shear. The space between the Prometheus and the nearest Hexan battle group seemed to stretch like taffy. Temporal distortion fields activated, catching 50 ships in their effect. To the watching galaxy, it appeared as if time itself had grabbed hold of the vessels and begun to pull. Metal aged thousands of years in seconds, hull plates corroded, atomic bonds weakening as centuries of entropy struck at once. Ships didn't explode. They simply crumbled into clouds of rust and debris, their crews experiencing decades between heartbeats. Impossible. The Admiral's composure cracked. All ships, initiate Delta pattern. Concentrate fire. Initiating Project Infinity, Rodriguez cut in. The crystalline structures in his lab pulsed with blinding light as quantum singularities synchronized. Reality shuddered. A temporary black hole bloomed in the heart of the Hexan formation, its event horizon precisely calculated to swallow exactly 317 ships. The singularity collapsed just as quickly, leaving empty space where a battle group had been. Fascinating result, Rodriguez reported. The quantum harmonics actually enhanced the gravitational effect. Should we try the probability cascade next? Winters watched as the Hexan fleet's perfect formation began to break. Ships fired desperately, their energy weapons dissipating harmlessly against shields designed by scientists who had rewritten the laws of physics. Master Chief Zhang, she ordered, broadcast on all frequencies. Let everyone see what happens when you bring conventional weapons to a reality-bending fight. The Prometheus's hull rippled with patterns of darkness as its next weapon activated. Probability fields extended outward, creating zones where quantum uncertainty expanded to a macro scale. Hexan ships found themselves existing in multiple states simultaneously, their possible configurations overlapping until they tore themselves apart. Admiral, Winters addressed the increasingly panicked Hexan leader. I'm only going to offer this once. Retreat now, and your remaining ships can limp home to whatever's left of your empire. Stay, and we'll demonstrate our full arsenal. You're breaking every law of physics. The Admiral's translator couldn't fully convey his horror. This defies all natural law. Carter looked up from his station, grinning. Sir, with all due respect, that's rather the point. The Hexan fleet's response came in a desperate, massive volley. Thousands of ships fired simultaneously, filling space with enough firepower to crack a planet. Dr. Rodriguez, Winters sat back in her chair, unfazed. Show them our final trick. Entropy inversion field active, Rodriguez reported with professional pride. Reversing energy states. Now, the massive volley of energy weapons simply stopped. Then, impossibly, began flowing backward. Ships watched their own weapons return to them, their energy states reversed into forms their shields were never designed to handle. Hundreds of ships exploded as their own firepower returned with altered physical properties. The remainder began emergency FTL jumps, retreating in complete disorder. Signal Earth, Winters ordered as the last Hexan ships fled. Tell them. She paused, watching the reality fractures spreading outward from their battle zone, creating permanent regions where the old laws of physics were more suggestion than rule. Tell them we've changed the galaxy. For better or worse, space will never work quite the same way again. Junior Commander Vexthor of the Hexan Empire stood before the Galactic Concordat, his proud species' traditional battle armor replaced with simple diplomatic robes. The chamber that had once trembled at the mention of Hexan power now watched in silence as he delivered his people's formal surrender. The Empire, he paused, mandibles clicking softly, withdraws all claims of dominion over Earth and her territories. Furthermore, we petition for a general ceasefire and recognition of independence for our former subject worlds. In the observation gallery, Dr. Rodriguez leaned toward Captain Winters. Did you ever think you'd see this? The mighty Hexans, brought low by a single ship. Not by a ship, she corrected quietly. By understanding. While they were building an Armada, we were asking questions about the nature of reality itself. The Concordat chamber's attention shifted as new sensor data appeared on the main displays. The reality fractures from the battle had continued to spread, creating vast regions of space where conventional physics no longer applied. FTL travel through these zones was impossible. Traditional weapons were useless. The very fabric of space had been permanently altered. We're tracking 37 distinct anomaly zones, an Altarian scientist reported, her crystalline form flickering with concern. Each with its own unique set of physical laws. The disruption to established trade routes alone will force us all to adapt. Ambassador Chen interrupted, stepping to the center of the chamber. Just as humanity adapted when we realized we couldn't match the galaxy's military might, we chose to understand the universe instead of trying to overpower it. Vexthor's upper eyes fixed on Chen. Your species. You knew this would happen. The permanent alterations to space itself. We suspected. Rodriguez answered from the gallery. The math suggested the possibility. But then, that's always been humanity's strength. We see possibilities where others see limitations. The chamber erupted in overlapping conversations as more data poured in. The Hexan Empire's former subject worlds were declaring independence, forming new alliances. Smaller powers were rushing to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. And through it all, the reality fractures continued to spread, forcing the galaxy to confront a new normal. The Prometheus will assist in mapping the anomaly zones, Winters announced, drawing all eyes to her. We've already begun developing navigation protocols for affected regions. The galaxy is changing. We can either change with it or be left behind. And what of the weapon? Vexthor asked, his voice carrying a hint of his species' former authority. Surely Earth cannot be allowed to maintain sole control of such power. Chen smiled diplomatically. The Prometheus isn't a weapon, Commander. It's a key, one that unlocked doors we never knew existed. The real question is, what will we find behind the next door? In the weeks that followed, the galaxy watched as humanity began sharing their understanding of quantum physics. Not the weapons. Those secrets remained Earth's alone, but the fundamental knowledge that had led to their creation. Schools of theoretical physics sprang up across known space as species that had once laughed at primitive humans now rushed to understand their insights. The Prometheus took on a new role, mapping the spreading reality fractures and studying their effects. Each zone became a laboratory for new physical laws, leading to discoveries that would have been impossible under normal conditions. The ship that had been built for war became an instrument of science, though its deterrent power remained undiminished. It's ironic, Rodriguez remarked to Winters as they watched a reality fracture bend light in impossible ways. They thought we were showing off our greatest weapon at that first demonstration. And what were we really showing them? She asked, though she knew the answer. He smiled, gesturing to the altered space around them. That humanity's greatest weapon was never the Prometheus, or quantum cascades, or even our understanding of physics. He paused, watching as reality itself continued to change. It was our willingness to ask questions nobody else thought to ask. 5 years after the Battle of the Kuiper Belt, the observation deck of the Prometheus had changed considerably. Where once there had been only tactical displays, now holographic models showed the evolving network of reality fractures that crisscrossed known space. Captain Winters, now Admiral Winters, stood before a class of students from a dozen different species, their attention fixed on the shimmering representations of altered space. The quantum cascade effect wasn't an ending, she explained, watching their varied expressions of wonder. It was a beginning. Each zone of altered physics presents new opportunities for discovery, new ways of understanding the universe. A young Hexen raised his upper appendage, a gesture his species had adopted from human teachers. "Admiral, my people's histories say your ship could have destroyed our entire fleet. Why did you stop at merely defeating us?" Winters smiled, remembering the fear in his people's voices during that final battle. "Because destruction was never our goal. The Prometheus wasn't built to end lives. It was built to change minds." Quite literally, in some cases, Dr. Rodriguez added as he entered, drawing chuckles from the assembled students. His lab coat now bore the insignia of the Joint Galactic Physics Institute. "The reality fractures have forced us all to think differently. When conventional physics no longer applies, conventional thinking becomes a liability." The main display shifted to show the latest map of known space. The reality fractures had stabilized into distinct zones, each with its own unique properties. What had once been seen as a catastrophe had become the galaxy's greatest laboratory. In the old zones, a crystalline Altarian student observed, "Our ships were mighty. But here," she gestured to a fracture zone, "even the smallest vessel can achieve what once required an Armada, if its crew understands the local laws of physics." "Precisely," Winters nodded. "Strength is no longer measured in fleet sizes or weapon yields. It's measured in understanding, in adaptation, in seeing possibility where others see chaos." The door slid open as Ambassador Chen entered, now wearing the formal robes of the Concordat's High Council. "And that understanding," he added, "has changed more than just space itself." The display shifted again, showing the transformed political landscape. The Hexen Empire had reformed into a confederation of cooperative worlds. Former enemies now worked together in research stations throughout the fracture zones. Species that had once competed for military dominance now competed for scientific insights. "Our single ship," Chen continued, "didn't just defeat an Armada. It proved that the path to power isn't through force. It's through knowledge. Through asking questions others fear to ask." Rodriguez activated another display, showing the Prometheus's original quantum cascade design. This was never meant to be a secret weapon. It was meant to be a key, unlocking doors in the universe that we never knew existed. And behind each door, more questions. The students finished in unison, repeating what had become the unofficial motto of the Institute. Winters walked to the viewport, watching as a research vessel carefully navigated the boundary of a reality fracture. The galaxy laughed when Earth revealed its single ship. "They're not laughing anymore. They're learning. And so are we." She turned back to the class. The Prometheus could have been the most powerful weapon ever created. Instead, it became something far more important. A reminder that true power doesn't come from destroying what we don't understand, but from daring to understand what others fear to question. As if to emphasize her point, a new reality fracture blossomed in the distance, its quantum barrier shimmering like aurora against the starfield. The students rushed to the viewport, their diverse forms pressing together in shared wonder. 5 years ago, Chen mused quietly to Winters, "They called us primitive for bringing one ship to face an Armada." Winters watched as the new fracture stabilized, adding another chapter to their ongoing revolution in physics. "They weren't wrong," she replied with a smile. "We were primitive. We just understood something they didn't. Oh, that being primitive just means having the most room to grow."